is basically start the conversation, recognizing that this won't be the final product, but they hope, they believe this could start negotiations. However, there is an understanding here at the White House this will be a lengthy process. This likely will not be the next major legislative agenda item for them, but they want this to start the negotiations in the hopes that in the coming months it will spark something that might lead to a bipartisan consensus that could finally, after decades, get immigration laws or an immigration overhaul signed into law, Wolf.
Yeah, this kind of comprehensive immigration reform is so important, long overdue. Phil Mattingly at the White House, thanks very much. Let's get some reaction now from the House Majority Whip, Democratic Congressman James Clyburn of South Carolina. Congressman, thanks so much for joining us. Do you believe this is the most realistic path forward on comprehensive immigration reform, passing it in different pieces rather than one big bill? How do you see it?
Well, thank you very much for having me. Wolf, these kinds of things are very, very hard to do. But just because it's hard doesn't mean we shouldn't undertake the effort. I really think we can do this. I was Majority Whip the last time I worked with Javier Becerra. Javier and I thought sure that we were going to get something from the Senate. You may recall the Senate gave a promise that it would do it, and at the last minute, both McCain and, if my memory served, Lindsey Graham decided at the last minute they were not going to move on it. So we never got it. This time, we are starting in the House. We are bringing all of the folks together. Linda Sanchez is doing a remarkable job of cobbling together all the forces, the various committees. Let them do what they think is best. Bring us one comprehensive bill. I think we can get it through the House, so long as we have everybody involved in the process. That is what she's doing, and I really think we can do a bipartisan effort.
Well, you think, obviously, the top priority for President Biden is dealing with the coronavirus pandemic, the emergency COVID relief plan right now. But will this immigration plan be President Biden's top priority if he wants to win Republican support?
No, I don't think so. I think the top priority for Republican support will be the infrastructure bill. That which I think will be what we would call our recovery package or our stimulus package. What we're doing now regarding COVID-19 is the rescue package, the $1.9 trillion. I think we need to do about a $1.5 trillion infrastructure bill. There's where we'll have our roads, our bridges, our water, our sewage, broadband, the kind of things, ports and rails, the stuff we need to do to get the economy moving, putting people back to work. We could create 300,000 or 400,000 jobs through a real stimulus infrastructure program. So I think that we're going to do that. That would be priority. But the committees will still be working on immigration. And once we get people stimulated, the economy stimulated, and people back to work, I think we can turn our attention to immigration. And by that time, they ought to have a piece of legislation that we can look with favor on.
Well, as you know better than I do, the House is hoping to pass President Biden's COVID relief bill by next week. But the Progressive Caucus in the House seems to be making clear they want that $15 minimum wage included in this package, not kicked down the road. If that stays in the bill, can President Biden still get it passed in the House?
If it stays in the bill, he can get it passed. If it doesn't stay in the bill, it will not be him taking it out. He has put it out there. We know that's what he wants. It's what I want. But we cannot get around the parliamentarian. And the parliamentarian is going to speak on this as to whether or not it can be in the bill. I'm hopeful we'll get a favorable ruling from the parliamentarian. And if we do, I think there are Republicans who will vote for a minimum wage bill. We know the minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. That is, in a family of 4 or 5 or 6, that's poverty wages. We shouldn't have a person working 40 hours a day and then a week, and then have to be still in poverty. We ought to have a livable wage. We aren't talking about doing the whole $15 by tomorrow morning. We're talking about gradually getting there, but show some movement. So I want it to happen, but we're going to go forward with the bill, even if the parliamentarian does not give us a favorable ruling.
Yeah, that $7.25 hourly wage, the minimum wage right now, that's been in effect since 2009, hasn't been raised since then, so it's time for it to go up, to be sure. Congressman Clyburn, good luck to you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Just ahead, could a second shot of a single-dose vaccine improve its efficacy against virus variants? We've got new information. We'll be right back. Breaking news right now, Texas Governor Greg Abbott signing a major disaster declaration as his state reels from severe winter weather that's impacting multiple states right now. The White House says the crisis is also causing major delays in vaccine shipments and deliveries. CNN's Alexandra Field has the latest from New York.
Hard-won progress toward getting more shots in arms derailed by severe weather across the country. Storms crippling efforts to keep vaccines moving. The delays could last as long as 2 weeks.
The challenge we have right now is that there's about 22 million Americans who have received their first dose, waiting for their second dose.
Supplies are running dry from New York all the way to Idaho, where only a limited number of Pfizer doses arrived this week. Same goes for Washington State. Major problems stemming from storms affecting the FedEx hub in Memphis and the UPS hub in Louisville. In Texas, a cold weather crisis creating an avalanche of problems.
We even had a facility lose power, so we had to figure out a public health facility lose power. So we had to figure out how to distribute and salvage those vaccines, which we were able to do.
The slowdown in vaccinations at a time when many Americans are already at their most vulnerable.
If you obviously are following what's happening with these viruses, particularly this UK variant, what we call B117, this very likely in the next 5 to 14 weeks is going to cause a major surge of cases in this country.
New reports show the vaccines that are currently available protect against new strains of the virus. But senior White House COVID advisor Andy Slavitt says manufacturers are looking at ways to combat new variants that emerge by updating the vaccines or adding boosters. Johnson & Johnson, the maker of a single-dose vaccine, which could receive FDA authorization soon, is also looking at whether a second shot would improve efficacy. Amid the race to vaccinate, the country is posting its lowest numbers of new COVID cases in months. The average now just over 77,000 new cases a day, the lowest it's been since the end of October. Hospitalizations now as low as they've been since early November. Deaths are declining, but still averaging more than 2,000 a day. The lasting toll of a virus that leaves a permanent scar on us all. The CDC now reports that in the first half of 2020, average American life expectancy fell by a year, the biggest decline since World War II. Here in Brooklyn, they're working with the supply that they do have, but they are prioritizing. They're only giving out shots at this site to people who are getting their second doses. That Johnson & Johnson single-dose vaccine should be approved soon. That would make more vaccines available to the public, but Johnson & Johnson is also saying they are doing a trial of their two-dose vaccine. They've already enrolled 21,000 people in that study, and Wolf, we should have the results later in 2021.
All right, we'll see what happens. Alexandra Field in New York for us. Thank you very much. Let's get some more on all of this. Joining us now, the former CDC acting director, Dr. Richard Besser. Dr. Besser, thanks so much for joining us. This weather crisis comes as the country is in the middle of this widespread rollout of a time-sensitive two-dose vaccine. So what happens, Dr. Besser, when these shots can't get to where they are needed the most, especially on time?
Yeah, I mean, this is a challenge, Wolf. You know that you can't predict the weather, and when you've got things that are time sensitive, it's very it's critical. On the timing side, though, 2 months ago, CDC looked at the recommendations in terms of how tight you had to follow that dosing. So for one vaccine, it's 3 weeks, and one vaccine, it's 4 weeks. What they said is you can go up to 42 days, so a total of 6 weeks. So although this is going to put a time crunch on that and get some people near that 42-day limit, hopefully the weather will let up and they'll be able to get vaccine to those people who are in that. But it will delay the number of people who are able to start vaccination at a time when everyone is so eager to get vaccinated.
Because a lot of people are waiting either 3 weeks or 4 weeks for their second dose. If they can't get it now, they're going to be nervous. Johnson & Johnson, as you know, which developed this single-dose coronavirus vaccine, now says that by the second half of this year, it will have data on whether a second Johnson & Johnson shot would actually improve efficacy against the new coronavirus variants that are out there from the UK, South Africa, and elsewhere. How important is this research?
Well, it is important. As we've been seeing around the globe, there are new strains of this coronavirus that are emerging. And what we're seeing is that vaccines aren't as effective as they are against the strain that was circulating here before. What we want to see, and I'll be looking at the data that J&J is submitting to the FDA, is does it hold up that they are extremely effective against severe disease, so hospitalization and death? We have to keep our eye on that prize so that we're not distracted by the idea that, well, someone could still get COVID and have some symptoms. If it saves lives, if it keeps people out of the hospital and saves lives with one dose, that's terrific. If it is less effective against the newer strains, then looking to see other strategies, 2 doses, booster doses, changes to vaccines, those are all strategies that scientists are considering.
Let's hope it works. Obviously, so important. Dr. Besser, as usual, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Wolf.
Coming up, a major breakthrough in space exploration. The most advanced Mars rover in NASA history has just touched down on the red planet. We'll have details when we come back. Tonight, the growing divide within the Republican Party is certainly on full display. Amid a simmering feud between former President Trump and Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, CNN has now learned that the number 2 Republican in the House, Congressman Steve Scalise, quietly paid a visit to the former president at his Mar-a-Lago resort this week. Let's get some analysis from our senior political correspondent, Abby Phillip, and CNN political commentator, Charlie Dent. Abby, first, the Republican leader in the House, Kevin McCarthy. He visited the former president down in Palm Beach. Now Congressman Steve Scalise makes the trip down there. Why are these lawmakers so intent on staying in good graces with Trump?
It's a real reflection of where they believe that the Republican base is right now. And if you are Kevin McCarthy or Steve Scalise, or really many Republicans in the House of Representatives, you are reliant on that base for your political survival. Remember, they are up for re-election in 2 years. Every 2 years, they have to go to the voters. And so I do think that they are saying very clearly here that they don't think that there's a path forward without basically bowing to Trump and signaling to his base that he is still someone with a lot of power, and that's not going to change anytime soon. They're not like people in the Senate who can wait 4 or 6 years for their time to come up before voters. They have to do it much, much sooner than that.
Charlie, you're a former Republican congressman. You know Steve Scalise. You worked with Steve Scalise. So what's your reaction to learning he went down to Palm Beach to meet with the former president?
Well, it's very clear to me that Steve Scalise and Kevin McCarthy have kind of put themselves in a bit of a box. They so badly want to get back in the majority, they feel they need the president to do so. But I would argue by embracing Trump and Trumpism as strongly as they have, they're making it more difficult to win back seats in the suburbs and these marginal and swing districts. And they only need to win 4 or 5 seats. But I think the closer they get to Trump, the harder it is, I think, for them to reclaim some of those swing districts they need to capture the majority. And I also think, too, that, we go back to the Marjorie Taylor Greene issue. They didn't go after Marjorie Taylor Greene. They didn't punish her because they were afraid that would alienate members of, say, the Freedom Caucus, who would then not vote for Kevin McCarthy for Speaker should they get the majority, just as what happened just like what happened in 2015 when those members withheld their votes. And I think that's part of this calculation.
You make a good point. The Democrats only have a 5-seat majority in the House of Representatives right now, so it's very, very tight. Abby, as House Republican leaders cozy up to Trump, Senate Republican leaders, in contrast, seem to be taking a different approach. Why is that?
Well, some of them have to have a long view, but also, take a look at the Senate members who, for example, voted for impeachment. So many of them are not actually running for re-election. They're retiring, they're leaving their seats. And so they were freed to criticize Trump. If you're Mitch McConnell also, you're thinking about what you need to do beyond